Screenwriters Rewatch from the Script Department, a show where we delve into IMDb's top 250 film list. This week, I'm joined by John, and we're here to talk about writer and director Guy Ritchie's Y2K cult classic film, Snatch. You can join us on our podcast for our full-length discussion, and we'll see whether or not it deserves its place in film history and in the Script Department vaults tucked away in Turkish's clapped-out caravan. But for now, John is going to give his review of Snatch. Welcome, John.
Yeah, so Snatch is one of these films that I think, for me, this is my train spotting movie, right? I remember when I was a kid, I would go to my cousin's house and he had this giant train spotting poster up on his wall, and it was like this great album cover. And that was like kind of how they marketed that film. It was like a great album cover. And it became kind of almost a trend among certain British films, particularly films that didn't cost an arm and a leg to make, where they would almost, like, your poster would almost look like an album cover for some new band or something. And for me, Snatch was that movie. I never really cared about train spotting until like years later. It never, grabbed me. I was probably too young. But there was something so iconic about Snatch. And that and it was the guy who did Lock, Stock, that film that like you shouldn't have seen at my age back then, but we all saw it, and here was Brad Pitt playing an Irish person, and it was just this really, it's just this like this surreal crime film, and I always have such fond memories of watching this. This is one of those movies this is the movie that put Guy Ritchie off onto stardom. Lock, Stock might be the one that got everyone's attention. Like, you've got to watch this filmmaker, like Reservoir Dogs for Tarantino. But, this is Guy Ritchie's Pulp Fiction, if you want to make that comparison. I think a lot of people were making these comparisons. Like, is he the British Tarantino? Is he the British kind of answer to the pop culture phenomenon filmmaker? There are filmmakers that make pop culture phenomenons like Spielberg, but there are filmmakers that become pop culture phenomenons just in their own existence. And Guy Ritchie became one of them through Snatch, I think, showing that it wasn't just a once-off kind of success. He was the master of the British gangster comedy kind of film. This is a great comedy film. It is the definition of great comedy. It is, if you look at comedy films as being movies where the characters always bounce back. I've always said James Bond is a great British comedy because of the way he will always bounce back. Tonally, they might try and make this, make them dark or whatever. But typically speaking, most Bond movies, Bond is always kind of bouncing back, revving to go again, and by the end, and or he'll be underwater fixing his tie or something, doing something absurd like that. And this collection of characters that Guy Ritchie has assembled here are very much within that same vein of comedy characters, where absurd things will happen to them, like Vinnie Jones unloading a pistol on a guy, and for some reason the guy isn't dead yet, and it takes a whole magazine of guns before the guy stops groaning, and a whole magazine of bullets, before the guy stops groaning on the ground, the Russian the Russian man. And it's the even just the story of the dog eating the diamond, is like, oh, now we've got to, you can't kill the dog, and it's just this wonderful kind of back and forth between characters and so on. So Snatch is a masterclass in comedy writing, and showing that you can have really scary characters, you can have really fun characters, you can have great action, you can have great suspense. There is great suspense in this film too, without ever losing sight of tonally what this film is about, and that is, it is a hilarious journey through the through the London underworld, criminal underworld. So yeah, I'm a huge supporter of Snatch. I think it's one of those films that really does stand the test of time. I think it has put an inordinate amount of pressure on Guy Ritchie as a filmmaker to live up to that standard repeatedly. I think Guy Ritchie does live up to that standard every now and again. I always think The Man from U.N.C.L.E., for example, a recent film he made, a few years back anyway, is a great return to form, I think, when it comes to that idea of absurdist action comedy, putting scary, comedic, etc., characters together, for a, in this type of fast moving, almost Ocean's 11 style frenetic energy of pulling off a caper. Snatch taps into all of that. Kind of did it before any of them, actually. And we talked about M. Night Shyamalan in one of our previous entries.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked about how unfair the industry has, or critics have been to him over the years, because he knocked it out of the park so successfully with The Sixth Sense, that it's just, if it doesn't hit that high standard, well, then you failed, which is such an immeasurable and impossibly high standard to ever hold somebody to. I think Guy Ritchie has actually been held to that standard as well over the years. And I think that speaks to just how brilliant this film is. So, if you want to find out how I really feel about the film, and and whether or not it should actually stay in our vaults, you'll have to stick around for the audio episode. But that's my review of Snatch, Helen.
Fantastic, thank you. A quick question: do you feel that he's lived up to the hype with recent film The Gentleman?
I didn't like The Gentleman. I thought it was. I don't hate the film, but I didn't grab my attention. There are things in it that I really like. I love the idea in The Gentleman of these wealthy or these people who've inherited all these big estates and they can't afford them, and he's using them as a way to grow drugs and or to run his drug empire or whatever. And that's a really interesting premise. But I think the film does fall into cliche, run of the mill characters we've seen a million times, fare after a while. I know they're doing a TV series of it. It may be out already, or if it's not, it's coming soon. But that is something that I think might have a better chance of living up to the expectations I think people have with it. But for me, they did a TV show of Snatch as well. I don't think that went down very well.
I haven't never heard of it until I was doing some research for today, and I was really surprised. So
I think that says more about the show actually than anything actually. But it is I have to say, I don't ever see myself going back. There are certain Guy Ritchie films I will always go back to. I won't be going back to Gentleman. And one of the reasons why is there is a very unnecessary, very troubling scene involving Matthew McConaughey's wife in the film that just did not need to be there at all. And I thought, we are not in the year 2000 anymore. Cut that shit out. Sorry. So I won't say anything for spoilers or anything, but just I thought The Gentleman was not a return to form. This almost feels more of a review of The Gentleman now than of Snatch.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave it there.
Go watch Snatch.
Go and watch Snatch, not The Gentleman. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, John. And as John said, you can join us over on our podcast to hear our full-length discussion, and we'll be back for another review soon.
Thanks so much for watching our video, everybody. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can like us and subscribe to us over here on YouTube. And if you want to hear more of this conversation, head over to Spotify, Apple, places like that for a much longer version. But for now, YouTube thinks you'll like these ones. They look pretty good. I reckon you should check it out, especially that top one. Ooh, nice.